We
Go
just
ahead.
signed Boban today.
Okay. I like Boban.
Are the Mavs going to join the EU later?
I don't know. It's quite possible between Luka Doncic, between Kristaps Porzingis, and now Boban. I do. I mean, damn. Yeah, that is a good point. It is a good point. It is a good point. Appreciate the call, man. Thank you, Eric. You're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Stephen A., it's a pleasure to talk to you this morning. I just wanted to go back to what you were talking about earlier about Kawhi joining the Lakers and how you like to see him join the Clippers maybe and see the guys play against each other.
Okay.
Well, I just want to go back to remind you about a time when the Lakers put together another star-studded team, even though a couple of the stars were a little older, Shaq, Kobe, Karl Malone, and
really? That's where you going? That's where you going, really?
No,
why would that be an analogy? Why?
Well, because don't forget that they did go to the championship, but they lost to a team.
Your fault. So, listen, I see what you're saying. You talk about when they lost to Detroit.
Exactly.
Listen, what I'm telling you is this. Karl Malone wasn't Karl Malone anymore, and Gary Payton certainly wasn't Gary Payton anymore.
They were a little older. You know, I know they were a little older.
They weren't in the primes of their career. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay. I got you.
You know better than that. You couldn't compare that. How the hell are you going to even bring that up as a comparison with LeBron and AD 26 and Kawhi being 27?
I'm not comparing. I'm not really trying to compare. I'm just trying to say that's why they play the game. Even though you might have a super team, don't necessarily mean that you're going to win. That's why they play the game. So in other words, you held on online to get on the phone on the national airwaves to tell me that's why you play the games. That's the best you could do? Just to remind you, because I know you know that. That's the best you could do. To remind me. You called up to be on hold to remind me that they still got to play the games. Wow. That's the best I got today. Happy 4th of July. That's not good enough for you? That's not good enough for me. It's not good enough for me. You can do better than that. Have a good day, though. Enjoy the 4th of July. Don't eat too many hot dogs and burgers, but eat some.
The way he does that is if he has the utmost confidence that they're getting Kawhi back for at least a year.
Masai in Toronto can make a case.
We're the reigning defending NBA champions.
You have an entire nation, an entire country that is Canada at your disposal. Doesn't appear to have any bad options at all.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
776 is our telephone number at Dan Graca, Graca. You can find me on Twitter. And if you missed any of my opening segment, go check it out on demand in the Stephen A. Smith podcast. It's brought to you by Eno, the Capital One assistant that catches things that might look wrong with your credit card. It sends an alert to your phone and it helps you fix them. What's in your wallet? See CapitalOne.com for details. And ESPN Radio also presented by Progressive Insurance. Cars, homes, boats, motorcycles, RVs, and more at Progressive.com. Talking NBA, talking Kawhi Watch here with you. And let's get to the phone so the people could chime in. And let us start it off with William in Illinois. William, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thanks for taking my call.
What's up, William?
Wanted to get a quick question in here about the super teams because I had the privilege of even watching in the Bird and Magic days. It seems old school teams started the super teams. The only difference now is the method. The players decide more than just the GM. So my confusion is, it's like we want LeBron to win with a championship with Mo Williams, but we're okay with letting Jordan win with Hall of Famers, Magic win with Hall of Famers, Bird, Hall of Famers, but we want this generation to win with like the sixth man on the bench as starters. So I'm kind of confused with that. I know the method is different, but old school started the super teams. If you look at our greatest players, there's not too many that won without other Hall of Famers. And the people that didn't have Hall of Famers back in those days that were great, like Reggie, Barkley, they lost.
Well, you're throwing Ewing, too, with the Knicks. That was the classic example, right? Because he never had himself, a number two guy necessarily. And, William, thank you for the phone call. You're right. You're right. And I think that maybe the fan takes exception with the method more than anything else because it is a little bit unconventional. And, look, unless you've been hiding out underneath a rock and you haven't been paying attention, the players are the ones who run the show here in the NBA, hands down. All right, Anthony Davis. A guy like Anthony Davis should spend at least 10 years with the team that drafted him, right? I mean, when you get a talent that transformational, that good, the guy should at least be on his team for a good number of years and give them every chance to put a winner out there. So Anthony Davis's contract is up in a year. He goes to the Pelicans and he says, you know what, guys? Sorry, this ain't working out. I want to go. So then New Orleans has to say, okay, fine, we're going to move you because we don't want to let you walk out the door for absolutely nothing, right? You want to be able to get something decent in return. But especially these small market clubs, you want the superstars on those teams. Now, the difficulty that they have is, number one, you're not going to be able to attract a lot of free agents. At least I'm talking big, major free agents who are going to really impact a title run. They don't want to go to those places. So the only way that you could possibly get them is via the trade or, of course, the draft. And then you hope maybe you get lucky in a case like in Oklahoma City, who decided to go all in, and they rolled the dice on Paul George in the trade with Indiana. And everybody thought that after 1 year, Paul George was going to be gone and he was going to go sign maybe back home in California. Instead, he decided to commit long-term here to Oklahoma City. Now, they haven't won anything, so maybe that's not the best of examples, but I think you catch my drift. You have to be a little bit creative if you're a front office guy in the NBA. And that's what you hope if you're Masai Ujiri and the Raptors, that you went all in for Kawhi. You went in and won a championship. You bent over backwards for him. You convinced him that this is going to be his best basketball situation that he could possibly get himself into, and you hope that he signs up now long-term and decides to stick with your program. That's the way you got to play it. Because the Raptors aren't attracting major free agents, franchise-type player free agents from elsewhere, right? The Indiana Pacers aren't going to be attracting those type of free agents. The Memphis Grizzlies are not going to be attracting those type of players. The small markets really have a hard time when it comes to bringing in that top-notch talent. Hell, look at the New York Knicks. They couldn't get those guys, and they play in the Mecca and the number one market in the country. Let us continue on and say hi to James in New Jersey. James, you're on ESPN Radio. How are you?
Good. Let me just speak my piece on this. I think Kawhi has done enough. He won the MVP, final MVP with the Spurs, won the Finals MVP with the Raptors. I think he can, wherever he decides to go, I think he's earned it. See, the difference is with him possibly leaving, and what LeBron did and what Durant did. See, I don't agree with what LeBron did, but at the same time, I think
Which
Durant
LeBron you're talking about? You're talking about the first one going to Miami?
Yeah, when he went to Miami. I didn't agree with it, but I understood it because he couldn't get past the Celtics. So instead of joining the Celtics, he just made his own team and ended up beating the Celtics. Till I die, I'll never agree with what Kevin Durant did. I don't care what anybody says to me. There's the weakest move of all time. Those guys on one team, if they're healthy, they can win as many championships as they wanted to. Doesn't matter. Nobody would beat them. Now, I don't even think Anthony Davis and LeBron would be able to beat that Golden State team.
Oh, no. You're right about that. And James, I agree with you, and I thank you for the phone call here. And look, this might be unpopular, and it doesn't matter, right? Because what's done is done, and the season's over. But if Klay Thompson, forget about Kevin Durant, if Klay Thompson doesn't get hurt in Game 6, we have a Game 7, and then all bets are off. What happens? All bets are off. Look, I was down on the Durant situation when he left Oklahoma City to go to Golden State. I hated it. I yelled and screamed about it on the radio for probably at least 2 weeks, like everybody else. That was a bad look. I said back then, Durant going to Golden State looked worse in terms of the optics than what LeBron did even going to Miami. It looked worse. You joined a championship caliber team already, a team that kicked your butt and prevented you from getting to a championship when you were in Oklahoma City and you had another superstar there in Russell Westbrook, and on and on and on. I don't need to revisit history. What's done is done. What happened, happened. Okay, now we wish KD the best. Go get healthy, heal up, and then go see if he can win in Brooklyn. We'll talk about that situation, too, before our show is done. Got to get into that. Let's say hi to Donovan. He's in Oklahoma. Donovan, you're on the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. How are you?
I'm doing good. My question is, now, back when, LeBron went to Miami, they had Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. All three of them are dominant ball players. And then at the same time, we had the same scenario happen in OKC when we had Paul George, Westbrook, and Melo all joining forces.
And it didn't work out. Didn't work out in Oklahoma City.
No. My question is, do you think if Kawhi does sign with the Lakers, do you think they're going to connect instantly like LeBron and them did back in Miami? Or do you think they're going to crash and burn like OKC did?
Well, they need more help. First and foremost, you just can't have those three guys and say, all right, let's go win a championship, right? I mean, you got Kyle Kuzma, who's there too. I'm not putting him on that level. Like some people want to say if Kawhi goes to the Lakers, they got a big four. Not yet. You know, we still need to see a little bit more of Kyle Kuzma. He's still a notch below. He might blossom into the level of those other guys. But, I mean, you think about those arguably are three of the top 5 players in the NBA. Kuzma's not on that level yet. Relax. Good player, good up-and-comer, but relax. Now where the Lakers are going to have to get creative if they get him, if you're Rob Pelinka and company, is how are you going to figure out a way to be able to sign some of these supporting players off of the bench? You know, those are important. You need those type of players. Look, I know the stars get all the credit. I know the stars are the ones that ultimately you're going to sink or swim with, but you got to be able to still make it work because your supporting cast could make or break you. Look at what happened with the Toronto Raptors. Do they win that championship without some of those bench guys? You know, do they win a championship without the Freddie Van Vliets of the world? Do they? The answer is no. You know, you need some of that supporting cast. The Lakers need some shooters right now. The edge that I give them, though, and the one area that maybe isn't as popular and isn't talked about as much with the construction of a talented group like that is when you have a Kawhi Leonard and you have an Anthony Davis for starters. Think about how locked down they're going to be on the defensive side of the floor. I mean, oh my gosh. Good luck trying to score on that team. And you know LeBron can play defense when he wants to, but LeBron, you know, he's how many years into the league, he's going to want to rest his legs a little bit. But the fact that you have those two guys back there holding things down on the defensive side of things, that means LeBron doesn't have to exert as much effort on the defensive end of the floor as maybe he would otherwise, which means he's allowed to be fresher when it comes to scoring, and it allows him to be a little bit fresher maybe later on in the season when the games start to take on even greater importance. Don't sleep on defense. Defense is important here. And with those two guys, all bets are off. Sam's in California. He's up next year on ESPN Radio. What's up, Sam?
Hey, Dan. Thanks a lot for having me. My question for you is, if Kawhi does sign with the Lakers, is it safe to say that LeBron would be the third best player on the team? And if so, will the Lakers still allow him to have the same say in personnel decisions, or will that balance of power shift towards Kawhi and AD? It's
interesting. You know, Sam, it's funny that you say that about LeBron being the third best player on the team. You can't make that assumption just yet. I hear what you're saying, right? Because, you know, look at where LeBron is in his career. I don't know how many seasons he has left of top-flight basketball. You know, and I think what was scary for him last year, and maybe not as scary for us who watched the game, but it was an eye-opener that this guy's been Superman like his whole career. He's been indestructible. He's played through injuries. He's managed to stay on the floor. And then last year, all that fell by the wayside when he got hurt on Christmas night against Golden State. Right? I mean, that was a pretty serious injury. Maybe even could have kept him out a little bit longer. So I think that forced him to maybe examine his basketball mortality a little bit. And I think it also did the same for us. Because now we have to look at this player and realize he's not 25 anymore. Shoot, he's not 30 anymore. You know, maybe he can't be asked to do as much. So having other guys like AD and if it is Kawhi, Kyle Kuzma, all right, maybe that takes some of the pressure off of him. But even if you sign those guys, the Lakers' window to be a championship squad, with LeBron being the driving force, one way or the other, I think we're maybe only looking at another year or two. So it's funny that Sam asked that question. LeBron as the central figure for the Los Angeles Lakers, you might be looking at only a couple of years tops. Just about where he is in his career and what happens, not to say that it's going to, but what happens if the injuries come back again this season and he isn't able to take the floor as much as maybe we would expect to see him out there. Then what? Look at what happened with Golden State, with Klay and Kevin Durant here in the finals. They went down like that. It could happen to anybody. And certainly your odds are greater as you continue to play more and more and more. And not only has he been in the league for 15 years, think of how many consecutive trips to the NBA Finals. When you go 8 straight seasons, you're tacking on, what, on average, an extra 20 games a year. So if you do the math, that's like 160 games during that span. That's the equivalent of 2 extra full seasons of basketball on that odometer. That's a lot to absorb. 888-SAY-ESPN is our telephone number, 888-729-3776. Got to get to the fallout, too, with New York, whether it's the Knicks, the Nets, the fact that the Knicks couldn't get a marquee free agent, the fact that the Nets got a couple of them. What is that going to mean for the balance of power? Jonathan Givony is going to join us from Vegas coming up at the top of the hour here to talk about Summer League and the debut of Zion Williamson tonight and what that's going to be like. It's Dan Graca in for Stephen A. here on ESPN.